Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about Polkadot and the DOT token and its valuation against Bitcoin and how that would relate to USD. If you guys like the content, subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So DOT is the fifth project, the fifth primary project I follow: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Link, ADA, and DOT. And we've talked about DOT and how it's generally a good idea to find a project that is launching into the space around the time that the bull market starts. And the reason is because to some degree, the sky is the limit. There's no mental barriers in price. Kind of like Ethereum has this like mental barrier at 1400 right now because that was the prior all-time high or just above it last market cycle. But speaking of Ethereum, we're going to be comparing DOT's valuation against Bitcoin compared to Ether's valuation against Bitcoin at inception. So what we're going to do is we're not going to include the drop, because when tokens drop on exchanges, when these coins are dropping onto exchanges, there's like a frenzy. So we're just going to take it from the top of the candles that led into the downtrend. So what happened with DOT against Bitcoin? It's pretty expected because DOT, this downtrend started in September, which is basically around the time when Bitcoin started pumping, and has gone an amazing run. And during that time, it's very difficult for any coin to keep pace with Bitcoin when it's moving up that quickly. Now, DOT, from that top to the wick down here, dropped about 64% against Bitcoin. And we said, it's dropping against Bitcoin, but that's okay because Bitcoin's going on a crazy run. We still believe in DOT. And I even said that I do believe, many times I said I do believe that we will look back on this as an accumulation phase. If you go back and look at all the videos that we have on DOT, we said, between $3 to $6, probably accumulation territory for DOT. So it was just accumulation, accumulation, accumulation. Nothing but mindless accumulation for me for the last 4 or 5 months, and we talked about on the premium list into thecryptoverse.com. Every single week I was buying DOT. And now we have a breakout. So what we want to look at is we want to say, okay, well, does it keep comparing? Well, one of the things we noticed with DOT is that it then pumped 80% against Bitcoin. Well, Ethereum also had a similar move. So Ethereum, after the drop, I don't know if we should take it from here or from here. If we take it from here and go to the bottom, it was about a 78% drop. DOT was around a 64%. If we go to, say, the candles, about a 70% drop. So from candle top to candle bottom, about a 68% or so. DOT was around 65%. DOT then had an 80% move up against Bitcoin. Ethereum also had a similar move up against Bitcoin. If you go to the top of the wick, it was about 107%. Top of the candle, 65%. From there, Ethereum dropped back down. And we're not really sure yet. I would say it's too early to say whether this general downtrend, and we probably should, for DOT, let's switch it over to the daily time frame. It's hard to say whether this downtrend will continue. One of the manners in which it might continue is if Bitcoin were to go on another rampage and break past 42K and make its way to 50K. If that were to happen, we would expect DOT to bleed back down against Bitcoin. However, if Bitcoin does not go on a rampage and instead decides to chill out at this region right here, then it could catalyze DOT to go on its own move. So let's see what happens. So with Ethereum, after this rebound, it then bled another 45%. But you can see that it bled that 45% over 2 months. Okay, it bled 45% over 2 months. For DOT, instead of bleeding it over 2 months, it bled about 34% over 13 days. So we're simply not sure yet if it will continue the same pattern as Ethereum. We're not sure yet if the downtrend could theoretically continue, and that would happen on a major Bitcoin move. Probably a major Bitcoin move to the upside or the downside. It probably doesn't really matter which way it goes. If Bitcoin has a massive, if it has a lot of volatility in the short term, it would likely lead back down to a DOT correction against Bitcoin. But what if this was our correction, 34% over 12 days as opposed to 44% over 2 months? What did Ethereum do after that? Well, from here, it moved up about 18% over the next 3 months. Now, the first thing we're going to say is that we certainly do not expect, I don't expect DOT to move up 18% or 1800% over 3 months. So it moved up 1800% over 3 months. I don't necessarily expect DOT to do that. For one thing, I would expect diminishing returns across the board this market cycle. The market capitalization of these projects are already a lot higher. It's going to take a lot more volume to move them. But be that as it may, we can at least speculate. And the reason we're doing this is because I've seen there had been a lot of negativity, not so much today since it's soared past $11, but when it was around $3 and it rallied to $6 or so, then it came back down. There was a lot of negativity because the general idea is, well, it's bleeding against Bitcoin, and we're making the comparison to Ethereum to say a lot of people would look at Ethereum and say it was a wild success of 2015. Most people, if they could have put their money in one project in 2015, in hindsight, they would have said, all right, just put it in Ether and wake me up in January of 2018. So the idea that just because it bleeds against Bitcoin that it can't continue or go on a major move later on is just simply not true, because we've seen these types of things in the past. It all depends on what Bitcoin does. So we saw Ether go up approximately 1,800% against Bitcoin. To give you an idea of what that would look like on this chart, I certainly don't think an 1,800% move is coming, but if it were, it would take it up to around this level, all the way up here. Okay, so it would be a pretty substantial move. Let's switch this over to the weekly time frame. So that's what it would look like. And if it were to go to this level, it would correspond to maybe a little bit less than 1,800, but a valuation of around 0.0038, 0.0036, something like that. And if it were to go to that valuation and the price of Bitcoin were to stay invariant, which it won't, then it would put DOT at over $100. Now, I know that seems absurd, and to some degree it kind of is, but that gives you an idea of exactly what people experienced last market cycle. Ethereum launched, it then bled against Bitcoin for the next several months. It had a little bit of a bounce, and then the bleed continued, and then in January of 2016, it went on an absolute rampage. So we're not saying that DOT will necessarily go on the same type of rampage, but one of the things I will say, as I've said before, is that it's good to have, it's not financial advice, but in my opinion, it's good to have one project that is new to the space and you think it will have a role to play this market cycle. It doesn't have these mental barriers of what the upper bound could theoretically be before it's some type of massive resistance level. It was a $3 not that long ago. I was accumulating between 3 and 6. Now it's at $11 in a very short period of time. You can see it had a surge from $5 to $10 in about a week or so. From here, it corrected all the way back down to $7, and in the last 3 or 4 days, it's rallied up another 57%. So I'm hoping that this Polkadot move is simply just getting started. Of course, as we said, it will ultimately come down to what Bitcoin does. A couple of different scenarios. The three things that Bitcoin can do, obviously, would be to go up, go down, or go sideways. So let's consider each of those three conditions. If it were to go up and surge past 42K, which is certainly a possibility, if it were to do that, then we would expect, in the short term, we would probably expect DOT to bleed against Bitcoin. That's just simply what we would likely expect. It doesn't mean it has to happen. I have noticed there have been days where Bitcoin's doing well and DOT does very well, kind of like today. And despite the fact that Bitcoin did very well today, if you go look at, say, the daily time frame, DOT has actually been gaining on Bitcoin over the last couple of days, despite the fact that Bitcoin has had a pretty good day or so. So if Bitcoin, though, were to go to 42K and then surge to like 46K and 50K, I do think it would probably be hard for DOT to keep up, though I think it would probably perform fine against USD. Now, that covers if Bitcoin goes up. If Bitcoin goes down in the short term, without stabilizing here for at least a few weeks or a few days, then the DOT price against Bitcoin would likely bleed, because simply we know that when Bitcoin bleeds, altcoins bleed more. And you might think that it's just simply not fair, because a lot of times altcoins are bleeding against Bitcoin, even though the altcoins did not rally with Bitcoin. But I mean, in this case, DOT did rally with Bitcoin, but that's just the way the market works, right? Altcoins are riskier. There's only certain types of market conditions that can help them rally and can catalyze their move. And when Bitcoin is going down quickly, that's just historically not a time when altcoins will make major moves. So that would cover if Bitcoin goes down. We would expect .USD to come down, and we would also expect .Bitcoin to come down. You can see here from January 7th, over the last several days since Bitcoin was bleeding, .USD was also bleeding, and it capitulated down to a little over $7. So we know that if Bitcoin capitulates quickly, DOT will likely capitulate quickly too. However, the minute that Bitcoin started to show that there was a little bit of strength in it, that was when DOT went on an absolute rampage again. So that covers if DOT goes down or up. If Bitcoin goes down or up. If Bitcoin were to go sideways and not really give us a direction as to where it's going, right? If it were just to go sideways for a bit, it sort of keeps people in limbo, because we're not sure yet if this is just a normal correction where we will ultimately trend back up, right? Or if it's a dead cat bounce, which will ultimately take us a lot lower. And one of the things is this uncertainty in the market. People will start to get anxious. There's going to be a lot of money floating around, especially all the people who have been heavily invested in Bitcoin, so they have all this extra money. They might want to speculate on alts. And I think there's also a lot of new money coming into the space now. A lot of new money has been getting spooked. They're probably looking for investment opportunities. And so if Bitcoin were to hesitate, which we simply don't know yet if it will, if it were to hesitate, then it's still bullish enough to where people might speculate on altcoins in that region, because we're still not sure if it's going to go up or if it's going to go down. If you go back to 2017, like if you don't believe me, if you go back to 2017 when we were at the top, and we're not saying that Bitcoin is mimicking the 2017 top, but we're just drawing the parallel that Bitcoin peaked on December 17th. It came down through the end of December, and then it had a dead cat bounce going into early January. And it was through this entire dead cat bounce where the altcoin market was going absolute crazy. Everything, so many coins were just taking off one day after another. I'm sure many of you guys vividly remember it. So if we are currently in a dead cat bounce that lasts us a couple weeks, it still could catalyze the altcoin market. And we're not saying that even if this were a dead cat bounce, it doesn't mean that we're going to drop 80%. Like we did last time. It could mean that maybe we drop back down to the 20-week SMA, the bull market support band. Of course, there's a lot of different possibilities. Another possibility, as we said, is that it could simply hesitate for a few days, giving altcoins the time to move, and then Bitcoin continues on up itself. We know this is a distinct possibility as well, right? If it could go sideways for a little, and then it goes up itself. It's already done that several times. For instance, it did it here. It hesitated here for a little bit. It hesitated here for a while. So we know it's capable of hesitating for a while before continuing up. So that is what we will want to keep an eye on for DOT. What is Bitcoin going to do? Is it going to hesitate? If it hesitates, like it is right now, then DOT probably stands to continue to do well. If Bitcoin goes up in the short term, .USD could probably go up, but .Bitcoin might bleed. And if Bitcoin goes down quickly, then .USD and .Bitcoin would likely bleed. So hopefully that covers the range. Hopefully you guys understand the risk involved, because there's no free lunch, right? We're not going to tell you there is. But if you want to theoretically, be on board, if DOT were to emulate anything like what Ethereum did back in 2015, 2016, it seems like it appears that the catalyst could be there We came down like Ethereum. We had a bounce back up, bounce back down, and now we're starting to move back up. So we'll see what happens. We're going to follow this project over the next several years. So I certainly don't want to have too many, too high of short-term expectations. But if we were to see a major move, we would certainly want to be ready for something like that. So if you guys like the content and you want to see more of it, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Let's go for 100,000 subscribers. Give the video a thumbs up. Check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. And remember, there's also the premium list at intothecryptoverse.com if you want access to exclusive content. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe and turn on alerts, and I'll see you next time. Bye.